Donald Trump has said he and his wife Melania have coronavirus and have begun a period of quarantine. They were both tested after one of Mr. Trump's most senior advisors, Hope Hicks, found out that she had the virus. The White House doctor has said both the president and the First Lady are well and that Mr. Trump will continue to carry out his duties while he self-isolates. President Trump confirmed the news on Twitter, saying that he and the First Lady will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately and that they will get through this together. Well, this is the scene live in Washington, D.C., where it's a little after 4:30 in the morning. We're going to be getting reaction from there as the U.S. wakes up to the news that Donald and Melania Trump have contracted COVID-19. Well, a short while ago, our North America editor John Sopel explained how President Trump could have contracted the virus.
It's simultaneously astonishing that the president, who is so well protected, where testing happens so much, could have contracted the virus, and also not in the least bit surprising, given the ambivalent attitude in the White House towards wearing face masks. And you talk about this very close aide and confidant, Hope Hicks, having contracted it earlier in the week. There is film of her and 4 other people walking to the Marine One helicopter, that cramped helicopter that takes the president and those people from the White House to Andrews Air Force Base. None of them are wearing masks at all. And that sort of underlines the problem, that you can have all the protection you need, but actually, if you haven't got the masks mitigating it, then that could be problematic and probably is how it spread. Donald Trump is 74 years old. The last full medical report we had said that he was obese. Those are 2 comorbidities that go with COVID. That said, the physician's report I thought was very upbeat in its assessment, although very early days, of course, because it says that he thinks that the president should be able to continue his work uninterrupted while he recuperates. And so no suggestion there that the president needs to step aside and that they need to invoke Article 25 of the Constitution for the vice president to temporarily take over. But where this leaves the campaign, and those small questions like that, who knows?
John Sopel, our North America editor. Well, before his positive test for COVID, President Trump spoke to Fox News about his close aide, Hope Hicks, and her positive test.
She did test positive. I just heard about this. She tested positive. She's a hard worker, a lot of masks. She wears masks a lot, but she tested positive. And I just went out with a test. I'll see what, because we spent a lot of time, and the First Lady just went out with a test also.
Well, First Lady Melania Trump posted on Twitter as well, following the news that she and the US president had tested positive for coronavirus. She said, "As too many Americans have done this year, the president and I are quarantining at home after testing positive for COVID-19. We are feeling good," she wrote, "and I have postponed all upcoming engagements. Please be sure you are staying safe and we will all get through this together." And Vice President Mike Pence tweeted, "Karen and I send our love and prayers to our dear friends, President Trump and the First Lady. We join millions across America praying for their full and swift recovery. God bless you, President Trump, and our wonderful First Lady Melania." World leaders have also been tweeting their reaction. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, "Wishing my friend President Trump and the First Lady a quick recovery and good health." Here in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who himself contracted coronavirus earlier this year, said he sends his best wishes to President Trump and the First Lady. "Hope they both have a speedy recovery from coronavirus," he wrote. And the Director General of the World Health Organization has sent his best wishes to the President and the First Lady for a full and speedy recovery. Well, we're joined now by Professor Kimberly Nalder of California State University, Director of the Project for an Informed Electorate. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us today. I mean, your reaction to this news, first of all, surprised, not surprised?
It's not surprising in terms of, his exposure and his lack of precautions in terms of the virus. If you think back to the convention that was held on the White House lawn, it was almost as if there was no COVID going on. No one had masks, they weren't distancing. And that's been sort of the case with many of his events. So it's not surprising that he has it, but it's still a shock because it has major implications for our election and for, just what happens in the country in the next coming months.
I just want to pick up on that right away, actually, because you referred to his appearance from the White House lawn to the Republican convention. But, of course, there was quite a lot of controversy around that, wasn't there? Because the White House, as a federal building, isn't supposed to be used for campaigning. So how do you think the president is going to handle that, given he can't campaign out and about in the next couple of weeks and the election is just 4 weeks away?
Frankly, he flouts laws all the time, right? Especially when it comes to something like the Hatch Act or several of the acts. So he's, he'll be forced to do campaign events from the White House, but I think, he's not going to suffer a lot of consequences for that because it's understandable under these conditions.
And do you
One thing, though, is
do you think in the circumstances he should be allowed to? He probably will, as you say, but do you think there's an issue with that, given that he has COVID-19?
I think it seems reasonable. I don't think that he's going to, be brought up on charges and taken to court over it, right? It's very understandable. In fact, it's advisable. We would certainly prefer that he do that instead of go out and campaign like he was planning to in person, bringing lots of people together, exposing more people to this virus potentially.
And what bearing do you think his contracting the virus is going to have on the vote, on these remaining few weeks? I mean, frankly, how would it play out if he either remains well or if he was to become ill?
Well, one of the things that is a main appeal that he has for people is kind of brash, combative, strongman style. And if he appears weak, if he appears sick, and especially if he gets intubated or he's on a ventilator, that sort of thing. I mean, that would really undercut that image of him, even if it's subconscious for people. So that would be a big concern for him if he did get especially sick. If he's well, I imagine that he'll say, see, it's not that big of a deal, and it will reinforce that message that he's been pushing all along.
Okay, Professor Kimberly Nalder from California State University, thank you very much for your time today. Let's talk now to Laurie Laird, who's an American political commentator and economist. She joins us now. Thank you very much, Laurie, as well, for joining us on BBC News. What's your reaction to this? We've had, the president as, some would say an out-and-out COVID denier. He's perhaps been forced more recently on a few occasions into wearing masks, but it's not his natural way, is it, to wear a mask or to socially distance? So what do you make of the fact that he now has the virus and how he's going to cope with it and the bearing it might have on the election?
Well, I think, like so many of your guests, this comes as a shock, but not a surprise. We know that Donald Trump is not often wearing masks, and I was watching his nomination of Amy Coney Barrett last weekend in the Rose Garden at the White House. Nobody had a mask on. It harked back to earlier days, before pre-COVID days. He didn't have a mask. Judge Barrett didn't have a mask. None of the assembled guests had a mask. We know Donald Trump doesn't like to wear a mask. We know that he's mocked Joe Biden for wearing a mask, kind of, questioned his masculinity. So it isn't all that surprising. I think there are a couple of big questions, though. One is, how sick will Donald Trump get? So many of your guests have mentioned that he is in a high-risk area. He is clinically obese. He is over the age of 70. And it's sort of ironic. Donald Trump has mocked Joe Biden for being so elderly. Donald Trump's only 3 years younger than Joe Biden. He is in a high-risk area. We know that his COVID was caught very quickly. He is probably one of the most tested men in the world. Could his condition deteriorate? That is a very big question. The other question is, who has he been in contact with? The president is in contact with so very many people during the course of a day: economic advisors, national security advisors, campaign advisors. It's not unlikely, it's not impossible that so many aides from so many different bits of ultimately, that could include people involved in the nomination process of Judge Barrett, people involved in coming up with a stimulus plan on the economic side. So how widely spread through the West Wing, through the White House, could Corona be?